Hey y'all, Kodiak here. So today we are talking about Bryce Crawford. He's a young Christian evangelist who's built up a big online presence. He calls himself a street evangelist and does what I guess you'd call Jesus in the street ministry. Talks to people in public, records his conversations, and posts them on YouTube and TikTok. And he's got a pretty dramatic backstory. He had depression for a while and was considering, well, look at the text on the screen. And before he tried to do it, he decided he'd go eat at Waffle House, where he had a supernatural encounter with Jesus. And that's how he says he started his ministry. He also hosts a podcast, does live speaking events, and raises money for his mission. And some of the things he says are pretty wild, so I decided to cover him. We'll be reacting to a few clips where he says some pretty out there stuff and dissecting what's going on. Now, before we get into this, I'm going to give a quick disclaimer that this video covers religious and political subjects, so if you're easily triggered by that, you may not want to proceed any further. If not, then without further ado, let's get into it.
Satan is waging war against the identities of human beings. The furry community is preaching this agenda that you can be treated like an animal, talk like an animal, and act like an animal, but that agenda is demonic and straight from the pit of hell. God has designed human beings to be two genders, male and female. Men, you're supposed to be firm, courageous, stand strong, and do hard things and lead well. Women, clothe yourself with dignity and let your actions be so convicting that it points people to the fear of the Lord. Don't fall for the lies and the schemes of the devil, because the value that animals hold is insignificant compared to the value that you and I hold, because we're made in the image of God. That's the value we have. The price that God puts on every human being's life is his own, because we're made in the image of God, we have his imprint, and we're so valuable, and the value that we have is in any other creature on this planet, because we're made in his image. So don't fall for these demonic agendas. Don't fall for the demonic agendas of the furry community, of the LGBTQ community, but listen and submit yourself.
Right, let's talk about that. Now, what Bryce is doing here is something I've seen a lot of street preachers do. He lumps completely unrelated groups together, furries, LGBTQ people, and anyone who expresses themselves differently, and calls it all satanic or rebellion against how God made you. And this isn't moral guidance, it's fear. It's fear of people who don't fit his personal expectations for how a stranger should look or live. And look, I'm also true. And I'm not here to convert anybody, and I'm not here to tear down Christianity. Many Christians are deeply respectful, thoughtful people who don't go around and demonizing entire fan bases or communities. But Bryce is doing something different. He's treating fursuits, the furry fandom, as evidence of moral corruption. Like he's seeing something and he doesn't even try to understand it. He just immediately looks at He's just looking at something and just labeling it demonic. Because apparently the Prince of Darkness has nothing better to do than make people wear fursuits. Now, Bryce's rhetoric is very simple. He reduces complex fandoms, communities, and identities and experiences and religions all down to one label: evil. And once something is evil, you don't have to understand them or listen to them or anything. That's why this kind of rhetoric is simple, and it's basically dangerous because it's airtight and shuts out any room for counter-argument. And furries aren't a monolith. They're artists, military vets, engineers, students, people with jobs, and people with families. They're human beings who like creative expression. They're not making it their entire identity. They are human beings with lives. Like me, for example. I am a furry, but that's not who I am. That's not my complete and utter identity. And I don't identify as a wolf. Just because your persona is something doesn't mean you identify as it. Now with that out of the way, let's react to another clip from the same video.
Submit yourself to the Lord, because the true American dream is living a life that glorifies God and living a life that God originally designed for mankind.
Of course, he's a Christian nationalist too. And now this clip is really important to talk about. Now Bryce is claiming that the real American dream is living a life that glorifies God. And on its own, that's not a controversial statement, for Christians at least. If he personally believes that his highest purpose is to glorify God, that's fine. That's his faith. But the issue is that Bryce doesn't frame this as his personal belief, he frames it as the purpose of the entire country, of the entire nation, as if Christianity is the official mission statement of the United States. And that's where we run into a problem. The American dream, whatever version you subscribe to, is about opportunity, freedom, self-determination, the ability to live a life on your own terms. For some people that includes religion, and for some people it doesn't. And that's not an accident, that's literally the point. America was built on the idea that the government cannot force you to believe a certain thing or anything at all. That principle was not invented by the left or whatever they blame it on. It's in the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Given how many Christian nationalists seem to disregard the First Amendment, it's enough to make you wonder how many of them actually read the Constitution. Anyway, by framing America as being founded as a Christian nation for Christians only, so they can live out a life that how God designed it, he's quietly excluding millions of people, such as Christians, different denominations of Christianity that may not agree with him, Jews, Muslims, pagans like me, atheists, tons of people. If you redefine the American dream as... So on to the next clip, I guess.
Astrology book, all of these things are demonic and straight from the pit of hell, and Satan's pushing the secular agenda saying, oh, your truth is okay, have your own truth, but this stuff is demonic and straight from the pit of hell, and this stuff will keep you separated from God for an eternity. And so if you're the devil for spreading all this stupid hogwash, this is what we think about it. We think it's stupid, we rebuke that in Jesus' name. Really? Astrology spell book? Like what are we doing here? All that can burn in the pit of hell where Satan's going to burn as well. If you guys want real life, don't look to stupid hogwash doctrine like witchcraft, dictionary of demons, gay witchcraft, the astrology book. Look to Jesus Christ. He's the one who has the words of life, like it says in John chapter 6. We rebuke all that in Jesus' name, and that stuff's going to burn in hell straight with Satan as well. In the witchcraft store,
You know what's genuinely bewildering? When you try to explain to some Christians that you don't believe in the Bible, and that they can't use it as evidence against you, they hit you with something like, but the book of Kazuhiro Miller, chapter 6, verse 7, clearly says that the Bible is true and that you have to believe it. And honestly, judging by that clip, Bryce seems kind of like that kind of guy. And he's burning books on witchcraft. Firstly, he purchased those books from the shop, so in order to make that clip, he ended up supporting the witchcraft shop. Anywho, he's attacking secularism and calling it satanic, claiming that Satan is pushing secularism. So first off, let's define what secularism is. Secularism isn't about attacking any religion. It's about separating church and state, government and religion, so that people of all beliefs, Christians, atheists, Muslims, Jews, pagans, whoever, can coexist freely. Secularism protects religious freedom. It's good for Christians because it keeps the government from imposing a rigid view of the faith, from favoring one denomination over all others, and causing a crisis, and leading to mistreatment of other denominations. And it's good for non-Christians because it allows them to live their lives without coercion, or being disenfranchised by the government. And now about Bryce's witchcraft comments, I'll be upfront. I don't fully understand Wiccan practices, and I'm not here to call them demonic or evil, but here's the key point. In Wiccanism, Satan doesn't exist. There are some satanic witches in other traditions, sure, but traditional Wiccan belief doesn't have a Satan figure at all. So Bryce is basically taking something he doesn't understand and labeling it as evil, yet again. Now, if I went up to Bryce and called his god a desert demon, not that I actually believe that, just hypothetically, he'd be pretty upset, and rightfully so. That would be offensive to him personally. But that's exactly what he basically did to Wiccans. He's publicly burning their books and saying their practices are satanic. And remember, Satan doesn't exist in their theology. So it's kind of like accusing a Christian of worshipping Sauron. He's completely missing the point of their belief system. And this kind of rhetoric really is dangerous. This kind of way of thinking is dangerous. It shuts down dialogue, shuts down freedom, shuts down any chance of trying to debate or reason because one side labeled the other side's beliefs as evil and therefore unable to be reasoned with, and it spreads fear. There's no room left for dialogue or understanding. Alright, so for this last clip, it's Bryce talking about the first time he went to a furry con. There's no footage or anything, he's just describing what he saw. Buckle up for this one, folks.
Guys, so basically I wanted to give you guys an update on FurryCon because our microphones glitched. We weren't allowed to bring in a camera, so we had to record on an iPhone, and our microphones worked before and after FurryCon, but supposedly during FurryCon, the microphones didn't work. So this is basically what happened. I'm going to share my experience and just give you guys some practical pointers on how you share your faith in general. When we got a FurryCon, I just thought that FurryCon and furries were people that just identify as animals.
Are you sure?
But this felt a whole lot deeper than that. It felt really sexualized, and there was just a lot of identity issues.
Are you sure?
Every furry that we talked to, I would ask how they are drawn to FurryCon and why they're drawn to the furry community, and every single one of them, without being associated to each other, all said, I feel accepted and seen by these people. So furries have an identity issue. It's an identity issue, right? Because they don't know that they're his, so that they have to feel loved and accepted by other people rather than just being his.
So let me get this straight. Bryce walks into a furry convention, a place where they're just hanging out, socializing, spending time with friends, and his takeaway is that they all have identity issues because they feel accepted. Think about that for a moment. According to Bryce, being welcomed by a community is suspicious, and feeling supported is a red flag. And if anyone exhibits either of those things, well, that just means they're spiritually broken. If they feel at home among people who share their interests. That is his argument. In reality, what he's describing isn't identity issues. It's what every functioning community in human history is built on. Belonging. Humans need belonging. Humans like belonging. And that's not controversial. It's not dangerous. It's not demonic. It's completely normal. Bryce is taking a basic human experience and twisting it into a spiritual diagnosis because he can't imagine that people outside of his worldview, or people who aren't Christians, or people who don't believe the same as him, have actual healthy lives. And he's framing it as... he's framing feeling loved by their community as a bad thing. Like, yes, Bryce, that's what a community does. Offers acceptance, offers connection. That's literally what a community does. That is the entire point. And to claim that people only feel accepted because they don't know they belong to God is just poor logic. His implication that being a furry is a result of the absence of Christianity or being Christian is also refuted by the fact that Christian furries exist. Yes, conservative Christian furries are a thing. They're a rare breed, but they are a real thing. On with the clip.
And so if people don't know that God, the one who knows the numbers on their head, the number of hairs on their head, loves them and sees them and accepts them for who they are and calls them to sonship or calls them to be a daughter of his. If people don't know that, then they're going to start associating and identifying themselves as other things.
Yeah, that's called slippery slope fallacy. Pretending that one thing inevitably leads to unrelated things.
Than just being his child and being his and being the apple of his eye. So these people, these furries, it was just identity issues, and they felt like that they were accepted and seen, which is really sad. Like, to me as a Christian, it encourages me as a Christian to want to step up and be there for other people and step up and make other people feel seen and loved. You know, you can make people feel seen and loved without, like, letting their sins slide. You know, you can make people feel seen and loved and them know that you're calling them higher. You know, love is firm. It's not just something that lets stuff slide or shoves sin under the carpet. Like, love is firm. Call them higher and love them well. So when we went to FurryCon, we just got to pray for a bunch of furries, and I got to share my testimony with them, and it was powerful. But when we got there, I was in a Jesus t-shirt, and we were getting stared at for the first 5 minutes we were there. So we went to the merchandise section. Now, this is where it got kind of weird, because I thought that there would be t-shirts and hoodies down there, which there were some. But for the most part, they were selling, like, tails, paws, you know, furry helmets, you know, all that stuff. And then there was an 18 and up furry section. So I told Josh, I was like, oh, maybe that there will be t-shirts and hoodies in there, because there weren't any in the main. So we showed our IDs, and when we go through the 18 and up, it was nothing but just a sex shop for furries, essentially. I mean,
what the hell?
Do you not know what 18 and up means? Did the fact that you have to show your ID not give you any hints? That's like walking into a liquor store and being shocked that there's alcohol.
it was just sexual stuff for furries, and it really broke my heart. I get that you had to be 18 and up to get in there, but even in the regular merchandise section that anyone could go into, like, there was some really sexual stuff in there. And you got kids running around. I mean, there were like little 6-8-year-old kids running around in furry outfits.
Okay, that claim about 6 to 8-year-olds running around in fursuits, look, no. Full suits cost anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000. Nobody is dropping that kind of money on a kid who's going to outgrow it by the end of the school year. And secondly, the vendors aren't responsible for who parents choose to bring. Like, the actually adult sections are clearly marked and segregated. You have to be 18 and up to enter, and that rule is enforced. But as for the other stuff in the main part of the shop, the vendors aren't responsible for who parents choose to bring. That's not their fault. It's out of their control. And I personally wouldn't bring a kid that age to a furry con, but if the parents do, the vendors can't exactly stop them. And the way Bryce frames it is making it sound like the vendors are luring kids towards that kind of content, when really it's just a convention with different sections. No worse than an anime convention.
Which I really believe that the reason that we have kids with identity issues is because parents don't feel like raising their kids, so they shove an iPhone screen or a tablet in front of their face to numb them and like distract them. But because they're distracting them with an iPhone or a tablet, they start identifying with these other things because the world is telling them who they are through social media and through YouTube, rather than allowing God to flow through parents and the parents taking on the responsibility of raising their child.
Now look, I agree. Excessive screen time is absolutely bad for kids. Now, that's not a controversial statement, but what Bryce is doing is that he's taking an actual issue and trying to recast it as a religious problem. Some kids may go on the internet, some may be exposed to furries, and some may become furries themselves. But what he's trying to do is try to say that it's a great religious failing. Again, some humans just like to belong, and kids are no different. Now, do I think that most of their social interaction should come from the internet? Absolutely not. But them looking for and being in communities isn't in of itself a bad thing. Humans wanting to be in community isn't evidence of an identity crisis. It's a completely natural part of being a human.
So you got kids running around in furry costumes. It just broke my heart. Furries need Jesus, man. I got so much hate for going to FurryCon. And I'm like, I don't know why. I want to be the type of person, I want to challenge all believers. The reason that we make the videos is because we want people to stop saying, oh, I hope someone goes to that dark place in America, or I hope someone goes there instead of me. We want to encourage you guys to say, no, actually, I want to be the one to go there. Here I am, Lord, send me. Furries need Jesus. Witches need Jesus. Psychics need.
That's the end of the highlights from that video, but all you need to know is that he goes on about the importance of going out and preaching to people and spreading the good news. So, closing thoughts. So Bryce clearly thinks he's helping people, and I get that. But a lot of what he's saying comes from a place of misunderstanding and overgeneralization. He reframes American history through a Christian nationalist lens and claims that the American dream is to live a life that glorifies God, despite the Founding Fathers not endorsing such an idea. He tries to frame normal human behavior as evidence of a great spiritual crisis, like furries are a community, a fandom. They don't identify as animals, and they aren't a cult. You can have a character who is another species from you, but not identify as that species. We just like having anthropomorphic animal characters. Kids exploring their identity via the internet is completely normal, although they shouldn't by any means be given unregulated access to the internet or anything, nor should the internet be a substitute for the parent. And secularism is not a satanic plot. It is the idea that the government should stay irreligious in order to respect all religions and not endorse nor suppress any of them. This idea is good for Christians and non-Christians alike. And a lot of his arguments shut down dialogue rather than giving room for actual counter-argument. Now, Bryce, if you're watching this, I respect your faith and your intention to help people, and my goal here isn't to attack your beliefs. I just want to point out that not everyone experiences the world the same way you do. And furthermore, the way you frame everything, from secularism to fandoms to other religions, is rather circular. Your conclusion is that anything outside of your religious framework is inherently bad, and anything within it is inherently good. That kind of logic makes it impossible to reason with someone who disagrees, and it ignores the complexity of real human behavior and beliefs. I'm not attacking your faith, but I hope you can see how this reasoning can shut down dialogue and misrepresent a lot of things. But that's it from me. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.